and my weightlifting trainer, and also the owner of X3 in Athens, Georgia. And thank y'all for tuning to my channel, David's Mastermind. So Brett, basically what we're gonna get into today, we're gonna get into a little bit about maybe basketball, football, about the next big three, the Lakers big three, and what they got going on right now. Then we're gonna talk a lot about fighting, about your promotion in Iraq, and not just that, we're gonna talk about everything, workouts, other things, and MMA fights, and what was your days doing, fighting, and all that stuff. So basically what I'm gonna get into, when you look at the Nets and the Lakers and their big three, what's your thoughts on that? Or who do you think is more so better in the big three?
Well, you know, everybody, LeBron's always been up for the best fighter. The best fighter, the best basketball player in history. Back and forth with him and Michael Jordan, but now LeBron, a lot of people think has lost a step or two, and Kevin Durant actually a lot of people think is the best player in basketball. And I think the biggest thing is, you know, that LeBron can still do what he did, but I don't know if it's quite as consistent as it used to be. A guy like Durant can be performing at the same level every day because he's a little younger, and just like, you know, Kobe, when he needed to, he scored 50 points on his last game. But, you know, would his body let him do that every game towards the end? Probably not, which is why he chose to leave when he did. You know, he wanted to leave while he still could do stuff like that without any, you know, serious things. So, you know, I'm a pretty big Durant fan. I like him, and, you know, I guess because LeBron played for Miami, I always come from Miami, so I'm a Heat fan. So I liked him then, and I got mad when he left. So, you know, part of me inside is probably glad he may have lost that just little bit of a step, even though he, you know, right now he can play on level of some of the best of all time, but he's probably not the best player in the NBA now, in my opinion.
Because to me, as I look at it, if I'm looking at the best player in the NBA, I'm looking at, of course, you know, the famous Bill Russell and what he accomplished as a person, all that stuff. But when you look at the next big three and the Lakers big three, the Nets have a power of people that can score. The Lakers, they have people that can score, but they're most solely big men, and you know the Nets are more so undersized people and all that stuff. But when you have Kevin Durant, who can give you 50 points almost in 2 games of the Eastern Conference semifinals, and then Kyrie Irving, he gets hurt for whatever reason, and then James Harden. I mean, the Nets would have won the championship this year if they were somewhat healthy, and they almost really could have went to the finals, especially if Kevin Durant didn't really airball. But then you also have to give Kevin Durant his props. Kevin Durant had played the whole game for Game 5 and Game 7. And you mean to tell me that you somewhat can't give him a little leeway for kind of shooting that air ball? Because the man was exhausted. I would have been exhausted too. And I don't know how Kevin Durant does that.
He carried that team on his back, and if he had one more, you know, especially since those other guys are prolific shooters.
Yeah.
And if he'd had even one of them, let alone both, it's really possible it would have been a different thing for sure. But, you know, I agree with that. You know, Anthony Davis also was injured a lot of the time, but, you know, in the end, you know, the Lakers definitely lost their step. Now they got another shooter in Russell, and the question is, will there be enough ball for everybody? Because, you know, as you know, the key to having a great team is balance. The Bill Russell teams, you mentioned him. You know, he had Bill Russell, John Havlicek, who was a great shooting guard, you know, and so back then they had the balance. They had a guy named JoJo White, and there's other guys that just aren't coming to mind right now, but the point is that probably Danny Ainge, they had a balance. And, you know, I think you can be all as good as you want, and sometimes one player can just about carry you, but, you know, to be the best of all time or to be a team that's the best of even the year, balance. So.
Yeah, definitely starts with that, and I agree 100% with you on that. So if you were to choose right now, if you had to choose, who would you think that would win the championship? Would you choose the Nets or the Lakers? Because right now I'm with the Nets for this most.
I'm leaning toward the Nets as well. They can stay healthy. You know, the fact that Durant almost carried them by himself means that you know, again, with one person or let alone two just, you know, taking up some of the load, if you could, you know, take up some of the load, even if you needed Durant to take over at the end, nothing that Kyrie or, you know, God, the beard, I'm losing my train of thought on his name.
James Harden.
But Harden, I mean, you know, either one of them could step up too, but to make one guy have to play the whole game and be the one to step up at the end, sometimes, you know, you're setting them up for failure.
All right. Yeah, so if you look at this also too, this is another question. Who do you think is under the most pressure? Do you think it's the Nets and the Lakers? Because from what I can tell, it's the Nets, because if the Nets don't hurry up and win the championship, the reason why they're under the most pressure is because they ain't never won an NBA championship in franchise history. They were supposed to win it last year. They didn't get a chance to. So hopefully if they're healthy, they can. And the Lakers, if Russell Westbrook really doesn't do or get him a hurry up and get him a ring, it's going to be a lot of stuff towards him. So who do you think is under the most pressure for right now?
Well, that's a funny question because, you know, LeBron has his legacy in one respect, but he's constantly coming up, you know, in the debate about who's the greatest of all time. And obviously if he falters at the end, no matter what his previous accomplishments, that still lets people look at it and say, you know, question his legacy, just because people always seem to, they say they remember the last thing you did, you know. So, you know, how that works out, of course, Kevin's already got, you know, a couple rings, Russell doesn't. But, you know, I think when people look at the Nets, they still look at Durant. So he has his deal. Will he ever be in the, while he is the best player now, I don't know if he'll ever be in the debate for who's the best of all time.
Yeah, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer now.
No doubt.
Yeah, because you know in the NBA these days it's so modern. It's like everybody seems to be great. It's like you kind of don't know who to choose. It's like who really should be the MVP? Should it be Kevin Durant? Should it be Steph Curry? Should it be Bradley Beal? Some kind of those people that can really shoot the ball really well and all that stuff too.
But LeBron, I feel like he's always fighting for his final legacy. And, you know, Kobe went out on 50 points, had plenty of championships, so nobody's ever going to doubt that he's one of the best of all time. And probably nobody will ever doubt that LeBron's one of the best of all time. But will he, if he falters at the end of his career, will he be considered one of the best of all time? I mean, the best of all time. He'll be one of the best of all time, but not the best. Now, while he might be one of the richest of all time, that's another story.
But that's great, and I agree with you totally 100% on that too. So I know, Brett, back then, back in the older days, I know you had met Carmelo Anthony, and I know. So what was your first thoughts on him when you met, and who have you met? Period. Like, because I know you meet a lot of famous people.
I met Carmelo Anthony, and it was at a club I was running, and you know, he brought some of the Nets people the Knicks people after they had played against the Hawks, and they were real nice, spent money, you know, tipped everybody, and you know, he seemed nice. All his players, you know, who were younger and not as well known, were respecting him, and you could tell he was the leader. So I met him. I met Scottie Pippen a couple times. One of the nicest people I met was Kenny Smith. He's, you know, I think he played for Houston, and now he's the, you know, commentator for TNT, and he was a super nice guy, you know, really friendly, down to earth, talking to everybody. I met Floyd Mayweather Jr. I actually helped put on a MMA fighting event for BET called the Iron Ring. And what it did was it took famous people and they had teams of fighters. They fought for the championship. So I had Floyd Mayweather Jr., Ludacris, who else was there? Floyd, Ludacris, Dipset, and a few other famous people. T.I., so they all had teams and they fought against each other, and all of them were real nice. I mean, I don't know. I was somebody that they were dependent on because they didn't know as much about MMA, so I'm not sure whether, you know, they're not nice to everybody, but all of them were really nice to me. And I've met Shaq a couple times. Shaq actually trains Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Imagine a guy that big being that tough. Whew. And he's always been he's a long-time MMA fan. I met Mike Tyson once, didn't talk that much, but he was real nice, and he's a big MMA fan as well. Yeah. So, you know, a lot of people in boxing like to talk down MMA because it's kind of the competition, but people like Tyson, Floyd, you know, they have never really had problems spreading the, spreading the accolades and, you know, praise and equality type thing.
That sounds like a journey, Brett, and all that stuff. So, and I also know you had met the famous rapper who had died a few months ago, the famous DMX, known as the Mr. Rough Rider.
I did.
So, what was your thoughts on that when you heard that sad, horrible news?
It is sad. He was in this movie with, I think it was Steven Seagal, but he did a remake of an old song called Anytime She Goes Away, and I really, really liked that rendition. You know, he gave it a little soul, and it.
Bill Withers.
I'm trying to think of who sang it the first
Bill
time.
Withers.
Who?
Wasn't it Bill Withers?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
we
was
just listened.
Bill Withers who sang "Lean on Me" also, but you know, the really kind of funk that DMX put in it. I loved his music. I know he was kind of a troubled soul. And that's sad. When I saw him, he was real nice, but he seemed like he may have been under the influence of some stuff because he was going fast, you know. And you hate to see that, but again, real nice guy, took care of everybody around him, made sure all his people that were with him were happy, and you know, it's nice when people, you know, take care of their people as long as they don't let it bring them to the the wrong side of things, because in my mind, a lot of people say it's not their job to be a role model, but I think all that money and success kind of thrusts you into that position. You become successful, especially if you come from very humble beginnings. I feel like you have an obligation to share. I mean, I'm not at any of their level, but I feel like where I'm at, I have an obligation to, you know, help people that have been less fortunate to me. That's why we do all the kids programs. Yesterday we did Ish, our boxing instructor who did an earlier podcast. We did chess and boxing yesterday, where we take young kids and get them playing chess and boxing and just try and show them some of the cool things there are to be offered in life.
He definitely, like you said with DMX, he's probably one of the greatest rappers of all time and the most influential rapper, probably, maybe not right there with Tupac, but he's one of the great rappers, and he should be in the Hall of Fame in music industry if they ever had that, but they really don't. So yeah.
I mean, his music is amazing, and I just wish he could have stayed a little longer. But you know what? Some of the most prolific musicians in history have those problems. Marvin Gaye from the old days, Jimi Hendrix. You know, I mean, there's too many to think about that have left too early because of the lifestyle and the thing. You know, I'm a real, as we spoke, me and your mom, I'm a big R&B fan, and you do see the people. There's a guy called Donny Hathaway who used to be with Roberta Flack. Where is the love? You said it goes, where is the love? You said you'll be mine on mine till the end of time. Was it just a lie? Girl, that's Tammy Terrell that sang with Marvin Gaye. She left before him. They did Ain't No Mountain High Enough together. I mean, some of the most prolific musical figures leave before their time, and the fact that we still talk about them today does show that their legacy lives on. And I think DMX will be one of those people. And I think, you know, like Marvin Gaye, every once in a while they talk about his demons, but I think his music transcends the demons for the effect it has on people. So I think that we will,
Yep.
DMX will be remembered fondly and kindly.
Always.
So yeah, I know you have promoted a fight in Iraq. How was that?
That was a pretty amazing thing. They had to be real quiet about when we were going and when we were doing it. It was almost all military people fighting. We brought some people from here. They brought people from across Iraq. We had the event on the military base. They had choppers and jets flying overhead to make sure we were safe. There was probably 4,000 troops in the audience. And when the colonel came up to me and said, "Man, Brett, thanks so much for giving us a couple hours where my people could be taken away from being where they're at." After the fight, we had all these guys set up, ready to go out on patrol. One of them had fought and he lost. He had a big old black eye, and they said, "Well, we had our fun. Now we're going out on patrol because there's insurgents out there." And I go, "Well, you got a black eye." And they said, "He's the best shot we got. He can shoot looking from either eye and hit anything." So, just being there, bringing the fighters into the fight. I had one guy, Maurice Jones. He's an Army sergeant, and after we left Iraq, when I was promoting other fights in Atlanta and Greenville, South Carolina, he traveled, flew himself in just to be part of our events. And I still, communicate with him through social media and all. Great dude, and the joy and the life, the life experience of being able to do something like that, which we were going to go to Afghanistan and they canceled it after that. So knowing that we were the only ones that did it and we were able to do that good is just, it's really special.
And I also want to know, Brett, what inspires you to do all this as a person?
I was a martial artist. I trained, I did a little competing, and then when I got into the promotional world, somebody asked me one time, "Why are you promoting and not fighting?" I said, I had this cool epiphany. I could either get hit in the head or pay other people to get hit in the head. So I thought, let me see if I can be the promoter. And we had real success. A lot of people went to the next level. We did fights that were meaningful, and doing the fights, gave me the opportunity to meet a lot of people, to honor some veterans at my shows. So I did that. I helped train some big fighters for their first fights. Randy Couture, who's a UFC Hall of Famer, and some other people crossed our paths. So, I felt like we were doing some important things, and when I felt like, because of the way other people were doing things, maybe not trying to promote fights that had true impact, I thought, rather than do something and not having the impact, which was my real goal as a true patron of the martial arts and, truest, I would call it, I just decided to do something else, and here I am at X3 Sports.
Well, Brett, I'm glad you shared the story with me. I'm glad that you inspired me, because you inspired me to do more and not ever just push for this, but push for more and never ever be satisfied with it. So I'm glad you could share that story with me, Brett. Yeah. So anything else you want to talk about before we get into anything else?
No, I just want to talk about people like you affect me. It makes me feel really good to watch people working to better themselves and working hard and being serious about it and not just going through the steps. I watch the way you concentrate when you do boxing. I watch the way you concentrate and try and lift weights right, and have an influence in people's lives where you're able to help them bring out the best of themselves is great in satisfaction, and just makes me feel good.
All right, well that sounds great. So is there anything anybody want to give a shout out to maybe before we leave or something? Anybody?
I lost my mom and dad in 2015, both of them. I'm really fortunate to have had them. They were great role models, great confidants, friends, people to have advice from. So, lost them, lost my friend Sam right before that. He was my best friend. He was the kind of guy that he'd be my best friend, but he'd be your best friend too if you met him. If you needed anything, he was there. He stretched himself thin, trying to be everything for everybody. One of the best people ever to walk the earth. And I've lost some important people in my life, and really glad to have had my interactions with them, and them influence me influence them. So I'm just happy that I've been able to follow this journey, and it's been as satisfying as it has so far.
All right, man. That sounds like a great plan and story. All right.
Pleasure.
Pleasure to see you.